Coming up, I'm going to be talking about the new series of Doctor Who. I'm going to be talking about the second season, how it's doing in the ratings, and my thoughts on the series so far. But before we go any further, make sure you do hit that subscribe button to keep up with the latest Disney Plus news. So recently, we've seen the brand new series of Doctor Who arrive on Disney Plus around the world and on the BBC here in the UK. I've been on vacation for the last couple of weeks, so wasn't able to kind of keep up with the show. But yesterday, over the bank holiday weekend, I was able to catch up on all 4 episodes, and I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about the show because there's some other news and stuff that I wanted to get in on. So this series has been running for over 60 years. I have been a big fan of this since far back as I can remember. Kind of Sylvester McCoy was kind of the Doctor that I grew up with, but I also was watching old episodes on the BBC with Tom Baker and Colin, etc. So this is a kind of an interesting thing. So I was watching all that, got right into it again when they kind of rebooted it with Christopher Eccleston. Really enjoyed it. Probably the most I would say would have been the David Tennant era. That was to me the best. Matt Smith was good, but not as good as David Tennant. Wasn't so keen on the next 2 Doctors. Did watch bits and pieces of them, the Christmas specials and a few episodes here and there, and then jumping back in a little bit more with the new Doctor. Really enjoyed the 60th anniversary ones as well. But wanted to kind of get in on this. So obviously Disney were brought in a few years ago as a distribution partner for the BBC. Now this meant that there was an influx of additional cash. They were able to spend a lot more money on making the show, extra budget. Also just the fact that it was on one platform around the world except for the UK. Personally, I think it would have been nice if the UK had had it as well or got it a little bit later on. So that's really helped in some ways sort of boost up the show. Now, obviously, Disney's involvement has slightly changed it. Apparently, they did give notes and stuff of some of the things that they maybe wanted to have changed on like the Christmas special. Apparently, they wanted a little bit more action in it. Unfortunately, with the internet, it seems to be generally everything that's bad about Doctor Who generally gets referred to, well, that's Disney's fault. And anything that's good, the BBC gets the credit for. That seems to be the way I look at it now. No matter what it is, Disney gets the blame for anything that's bad about these episodes, which I don't think is really the case. I think, obviously they are having an input, they are spending on it, but generally this is a BBC-made show. Right now, we're about halfway through the first season. We're going to have a new Christmas special coming out later this year on Christmas Day. And recently they have been filming the second season. Now, the second season has now wrapped. The showrunner, Russell T Davies, took to social media over the weekend and said that it's now wrapped. So the second season done. Obviously, they've got to add in all the special effects, do all the editing. So that takes a lot of time. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if we don't see the new season of Doctor Who, Season 2, dropping onto Disney Plus and iPlayer next year. They don't need to do it this year, but that means they've kind of got it all in the can. I do think as well with the strikes and everything going on, they probably were able to rush through and get this one done because they weren't impacted as much. And with everything going on, it probably made a lot more sense for them to do so. So we know now Season 2 is happening, it's filmed, that's going to happen. But I do have a worry about the future of Disney's involvement in Doctor Who after this second season. Now, it is a multi-year deal. We don't know if it's going to go any further of that. And Doctor Who's been going for 60 plus years. It's been cancelled before it's come back. There's been a lot of talk about the fact that if Disney weren't involved, would the BBC continue to be making the series? There's kind of questions over whether or not that would happen because of the money side of things. I personally think they'd find some other person to sort of pay up, or they would just prioritize it, maybe make specials and stuff. But I do not think that even if the Disney pulled out of the contract and was like, we don't want to do it anymore, I think that Doctor Who would continue in some form or another. It's been around too long, but I do have some questions about whether or not Disney are going to continue to be involved in this show. And the reason for that, I think, is down to how many people are watching the show. Doctor Who here in the UK is kind of an institution. It's generally always had pretty good ratings. They kind of go up and down depending on who the Doctor is. And obviously, it was cancelled back in the 80s because not enough people were watching it, and they brought it back. There was a movie that they tried doing with Paul McKenna, and that didn't work, so they didn't bring it back then. So the show has had ups and downs, and it has come back and come and gone. So there's nothing too different with that one. The difference as well with ratings, it's very, very easy to look at the ratings for what's going on right now and be going, well, these are massively down on years ago. everything is massively down. You only have to look at other British shows right now to realise that ratings on linear television are much lower than they used to be, even when you take into consideration the streaming aspect, because Coronation Street, EastEnders, even Britain's Got Talent, all these kind of things, the viewing numbers are lower than they used to be. People watching on streaming, but also audiences have got so much more content to be able to enjoy. There's just a lot more stuff to do than there was years ago, and viewership is down. So we have to accept that that is an issue. But I do think that the sort of Disney's involvement in the show is more at risk because of the fact that we're 4 episodes in right now, and Disney, nor the BBC, has really been shouting from the rooftops that this is a success. And that, to me, is the key point. Whenever Disney gets something that's good and does really well, they're very quick to put out a little press release saying how successful it was. It's when they don't do that is when you usually start getting a little bit worried, because that's the way I look at it. If they're not tooting their own horn, that's not a good sign, because that's usually what they tend to do. Now, here in the UK, some viewership data has been released about the episodes. So the first episode, called Space Babies, was watched by 2.6 million viewers live on BBC One. And over the 7 days on both iPlayer and on BBC, it was watched by 4.01 million. Now, it's important to note that in some ways the release schedule for Doctor Who is going to naturally result in the viewership on BBC One to be lower, because they're now releasing it at midnight rather than it always being at one time on BBC and then it being on iPlayer. They're releasing it earlier in the day, so therefore when you wake up on Saturday morning here in the UK, the episode is available to watch. So therefore that's going to impact how many people are watching it live. There is a simultaneous worldwide release, so it ends up going out in the US in the evening and then here in the UK, as I said. Now, I'm not convinced that is... I think, the idea of it kind of being going out at prime time US, but it's not going out still prime time as a debut here in the UK. I think that's not a great idea for a British show. Then I think that hasn't gone down too well with British audiences. The fact that they're waking up to spoilers and then they have to jump on and do it. And it's like, well, Marvel, Star Wars, Game of Thrones, all that kind of thing, you kind of do it. But Doctor Who is a British show, and I think that has annoyed some fans. But it doesn't bother me because it's what we're used to with every other show. Don't necessarily see a big issue. But moving on from there, some other ratings. The Devil's Cord was slightly down on the first episode. 2.4 million people watched it live. 3.9 million watched on iPlayer and BBC combined. However, it's the next week where there was a big drop. We don't yet have the 7-day numbers for either episode Boom or 73 Yards, but we do know that the live stream on BBC was watched by 2.04 million, which is down over 500,000 over the previous 2 weeks. Now that's not a good sign, but obviously that might have been that people didn't like those first 2 episodes and then therefore didn't bother coming in for it, or they just maybe found actually we can watch it on iPlayer and we don't need to wait. That could have been an issue. The following week, this past Saturday, for 73 Yards, the overnight viewingship for BBC One actually was much higher. It was back up to 2.62 million, so basically on par with the premiere, which is good. And I'll be honest, that was a really good episode. That was my favourite of the series so far, but I'll get into that a little bit more. So yeah, we can see that the viewership went down for Boom, but they went back up, and there was a lot of strong word of mouth that the episode was good. That's probably helped. But generally, the viewership has kind of been jumping around a little bit. But again, BBC viewership live is only what we've got so far. That's the only information. The BBC hasn't put out any other information about how it's done. Disney hasn't put out any information about how it's doing on Disney+. The Nielsen numbers aren't yet been released for this week, and I am not expecting it to hit Nielsen. None of the 60th anniversary episodes did. And also, just looking at the trending chart on Disney+, like literally just this morning on Monday, I've just had a look, and it's way down at the very bottom of the trending chart. Sometimes it moves up a little bit during the, like on the Friday, Saturday, but it's still very, very low compared to most other major hits. Looking on like other charts and stuff, just generally doesn't seem to be a lot of interest in the show. There is, a lot of people online talking about how they're enjoying it and all the rest of it, but there is no doubt that the viewership is much lower. Now, obviously, these episodes are much cheaper to make than Marvel or Star Wars, so that's a good thing, so therefore they can keep going. There's also being co-funded by 2 different companies, so therefore that helps with doing all this. But I'm not, if it turns out that these numbers are continuing to kind of around this number. I wouldn't be surprised if Disney kind of pulls the cord at the end of the second season. They might be wanting to wait until they get this first season completely out, get all the data, see how it does worldwide, see if it's worth continuing on with this partnership. We obviously know that that second season's coming in. Now, I don't really feel like Disney's done a huge amount of marketing for this show. They didn't do anything really for the 60th anniversary specials, but it kind of made sense because it wasn't really their thing. The Christmas special did a little bit, and obviously the launch of the show, they put a TARDIS in, like downtown Disney at Disney Springs. They had Shuti Gatwa and Millie out there doing some photo shoots. They had a premiere, but that's about it. It's kind of like what I would call almost now like bare bones. There's not a huge amount of excitement. Now, obviously, being here in the UK and all the rest of it, it's a little bit more trickier because obviously it's on the BBC, and they don't tend to advertise in the same way because it's a public system, so therefore they don't spend a lot of money advertising. They don't really need to in that same way. But yeah, I do think that that is going to be an issue. Disney, I don't think, are putting in the same amount of advertising as they are for their other stuff. And I also have a big question mark over Doctor Who because this was an acquisition that got brought in by Bob Chapek. Now with Bob Iger back in, he wants to focus on franchises and IPs, and that's a good thing, in some ways for Doctor Who because it is one of them, but it's not one of theirs, and they can't utilize it. They can't put a theme park ride in unless there's going to be some issues there. And I think that is something that I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't fit with their way going forward. Why would they want to put money into a show they haven't got full access to? We haven't got access to the previous seasons as well. That would be a nice addition. I've spoken to a lot of people as well. I've seen it in the comments and stuff of people talking about not wanting to get into Doctor Who because they don't want to know, they haven't watched it in the past. And, this whole method of the idea of it being season 1 and it's a good fresh point to jump in. There's still a lot of kind of like, it's been around for a long time. I don't know what it is. I don't want to get on it. So I think that is a problem for Doctor Who, definitely. But I do think with this new show, it is a perfect time to jump in. If you have never jumped in, I'd start probably with the Christmas episode and go from there. One of the great things about Doctor Who is we see it from the point of view of the companion who is seeing everything for the very first time. So the Doctor explains to her what's going on, what that is, why that's important. And basically brings the audience up to where we need to be. So never really have to worry too much about it because I think the BBC shows like Doctor Who really do a great job of doing that, of getting you up to speed. So don't worry about that. But yeah, so I'm a little bit worried. Now, I've obviously seen the first 4 episodes now. I really enjoyed the Christmas episode. That came out obviously back at Christmas. I enjoyed that one there. But I thought Space Babies was awful. I thought that was an awful show. I think this was the prime example for this was the fact that they had a higher budget to do some more special effects, and they did that, and those babies looked awful. It just was one of those things of just because you can doesn't mean you should, because this is not going to age well. Jokes about boogers and all the rest of it. Okay, it was okay, but the special effects really, I thought, brought it down. I really enjoyed the Maestro episode, which obviously is called The Devil's Cord. I thought that worked really well and felt more like traditional Doctor Who with a main villain and them trying to stop them. And yeah, I thought that worked out pretty well. I think my second favourite of the 4 that we've had so far. I did like that one there. Whole thing with the Beatles as well, and just the music, and just I enjoyed it. The 3rd episode, Boom, which was him basically just standing on a mine for the entire. It's like one way of doing a really cheap episode is not to have. You've got one virtual set, and they all just wasn't so keen on that one. And I thought it was about as subtle as a brick with some of the messaging and stuff that were put across with that one. Yeah, it just wasn't my favourite of them. And then we had 73 Yards, which was a much superior episode, one without the Doctor really in it, which was kind of weird. But I love the whole aspect, the story of it. I don't want to really get into spoilers if you haven't seen it, but that was a fantastic episode, and because it leaned in on a different kind of genre and just told a bit of a spooky episode. Yeah, I liked it. The ending was a little bit weird, but it was definitely a good, solid episode, and shows how with Doctor Who you can have really good ones or not. And I think that's one of the issues with this show, is I do question whether or not Doctor Who works with this new audience. Are younger audiences watching this? Because this show is aimed at children and families. It's not aimed at adults. You can tell that with the jokes and the way they do stuff. It's not aimed, at 20, 30-year-olds. They want us to enjoy it, but it isn't. That's not the target audience. It's for the whole family. It's for everyone. And therefore it skews a little bit younger. If you're going into this wanting it to be like Andor, that's not what Doctor Who is. It never has been. They have some more serious episodes here and there, but it is very much aimed at younger audiences. And I'm just not sure if kids are going to watch this, with YouTube and TikTok and video games and stuff. It feels like a little bit naff, a little bit hit and miss, and I'm just not sure it's going to click with an audience. We've also got that other thing of, does it click on an international level? Is it going to be enough for Disney to be like, especially, is the American audience going to connect with this in the same way? Or is it time that we just put Doctor Who back and let it go for a few years and then bring it back? Have a different change in how it does it. Now, I do think that this current series, there's no point in denying the fact that there is a massive sort of negative aspect coming to this series from the idea of the culture wars and stuff because of all the messaging, and it is very strong messaging. There's no point in sugarcoating it, and that is going to put some people off. Doctor Who's always had this kind of messaging, but it does seem like it's a lot stronger than it used to be. Which is to me, there's that whole thing of alienating an audience or half the audience. It's not a good thing. You should be trying to help everyone, but also bring these stories in, but do it a little bit more subtly some ways. So I think that's something that they need to look at. And I don't know. I think this version of Doctor Who has already got a big target and stamp on it, and nothing that they do is going to make any difference at this point. It's going to be the next reboot or the next Doctor or whoever is in charge is the only way that a big chunk of the audience is ever going to check it out again. It's already been marked. And I think that's the problem for this show, is I can't see the numbers going up anymore. I think they've got their audience and it's not going to go up anymore. It's a shame. I was hoping that the launch on Disney Plus was going to allow this show to reach a bigger audience and get bigger and grow into it, but it doesn't. I'm not feeling that. I'm not feeling the interest when I'm looking at, like when I post about it, when I do videos or anything about it, I can, you can sense it. When you're looking online and looking at things, there's a lot of people that are excited about it, and there's no point in that. And there's a whole, like I said, culture war issue on the other side, like poking and targeting it. But the question is, the ratings and stuff aren't really blowing away, and I think that's going to be the issue moving forward of whether or not Disney continue it. Like I said, I don't think Doctor Who will go. I think it will, they might stop it for a bit and then come bring it back in a little while. It's a big money maker for the BBC, but Disney's involvement is in flux. We've never seen this with Doctor Who before. It's a very different situation. But yeah, I'm now we've got this second season as wrapped. I do wonder if Disney, are we going to get an announcement of season 3 pretty soon so they can get filming and get making on that? Or are they going to wait and see how season 2 does, and then we're going to have an even bigger wait? I mean, I know they wanted to get them out a bit quicker. Maybe season 3 will pick up quite quickly, and the BBC will just be moving along with it anyway. Don't know. It is interesting. I don't know what you guys think of it. Are you enjoying Doctor Who? Do you think they're going to continue the relationship with Disney? Do you think it will get a third season? I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this in the comments below. Remember to go check us out over at what's on at disneyplus.com. If you could do as well, if you'd like to support the channel, hit that join button as well. That would make a massive difference. And also I did have a question from a while ago that I wanted to just bring up because I did my questions a day. It was, who's been my favourite Doctor? I'm going to have to say it's definitely David Tennant would be my favourite Doctor of all of them. That was a series that really pulled me in, and I think it pulled in most of the audience as well, that and Matt Smith. But let me know in the comments below, who is your favourite Doctor? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well. Well, anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching. I'll be back tomorrow with another news update. And on that note, guys, thank you very much. See you guys soon. Laters.